What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thanksgiving Eve version of Morning Cuppa Hockey presented by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So use our code NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N, in all caps. The Thanksgiving Eve thing is going to be a big focus of today's show. We're going to talk about the current NHL standings because, as most people know, about 75% or more, slightly over, of the teams that are in a playoff spot by tomorrow usually are the ones that make the playoffs come April. So we're going to talk about which teams are going to stay in, what teams might come out, and what teams might go in. But before we do any of that, Colby, I know you wanted to talk about the CHL versus USA prospect game last night. I didn't catch any of it, so I can't comment or give any opinion on it, but I know some of our listeners and chat members may have watched. But what were your thoughts on that game and things you saw?
I mean, listen, I'm just going to say this. As I sit here with my USA Hockey player development hat on, well, I've been wearing lately. Let's not every
you switched
day,
off between that Titans and BU.
But lately I've been rocking it where like this is kind of new to the rotation, so I just keep it down here, but I digress. So massively disappointed in USA Hockey last night. Again, a program that I played for, a banner that I take a lot of pride in, people that I care about, people that I respect, but massive, massive disappointment in USA Hockey last night, and not because of the score of the game. Okay. Listen, it's pretty embarrassing that the national development team, a team went into a game. It was mostly a team, and lost to a quote-unquote all-star team, right? I mean, you have a group of guys who generally play together versus a group of guys who don't, and you lose the game 6-1. So, like, but again, that's not, like, hockey's hockey, right? Like, I'm not going to go there too much. Here's where I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed that USA Hockey didn't think it was important enough to have their own broadcast. And they took the feed from TSN, and they showed it here in the United States. And it was basically a 2.5-hour advertisement for why the CHL is now a better route than the National Development Team or the USHL. That's what it basically turned into. Whether that was the intention or not, that's what it turned into, because you couldn't control the messaging. You obviously can't control the hockey game. The hockey game's a hockey game, right? USA lays an egg. But this game had more meaning, in my opinion, because of the changing landscape in the NCAA and in junior hockey. And I just thought it was a huge miss, right? USA could have ponied up, money and put on their own production and put that feed through the United States and made it, a more pressing advertisement for the, for the US development model. Right. And again, that matters to me. Right. I'm an American. I coach hockey here in the United States. I came through the U.S. national development team on my path. And so it just disappointing. Right. I mean, the fact that they didn't pony up, it was disappointing. And listen, credit the Canadians, because they did what they always do. Number one, they beat the crap out of us. Okay, in the game. Number two, they put on a very professional broadcast, as they always do. Okay, and TSN did a great job, and they made it very biased towards the CHL in Canada, which they should. And when you're winning 6-1, what else are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
But just massive, massive disappointment in USA Hockey last night. And listen, my phone may ring when we get done the show today that there's angry people at USA Hockey, people that I'm very close with, won't like that I'm sitting here running my mouth about USA Hockey. But like, I'm not going to hold back, as I usually don't, right? Yeah. Like I got to be fair when you got to be fair. And to me, that was just complete and utter disappointment, nonsense, being cheap. Plenty of ways you can describe it, but it really annoyed me, especially because of everything else going on around this situation. I disappointing, Johnny.
Well, the one thing I will say is that I feel like TSN, and sorry, I kind of felt like I tried to jump in a couple times there, and that's my bad for doing that.
It's okay, I do that to you all the time. Go for it. I tell you to cut me off. I tell you to cut me off more, and I wish you would. So go
You were
ahead.
flowing though. You were flowing, but I just feel like TSN does a better job, even in general, of promoting Canadian prospects. Like I feel like I'm seeing clips on social media constantly throughout the year of Canadian and CHL prospects, where I'm not even seeing that for the American prospects. And maybe that's just because of the NCAA. Like maybe because most of the American prospects are playing college hockey, and we promote college hockey over just the prospects. But I think that's something that we can do a better job of in general anyway, not just something in a one night showcase, you know?
Listen, Canada, hockey is the what? There's football, there's basketball, there's baseball. It's not number one in America.
No,
Like we're not.
You're agreeing
We're
with
not,
me. You're agreeing.
exactly. So there's people like John Butchergross that go on ESPN and they do it. And look, it's gotten better with ESPN. Having hockey, and you are starting to hear about it more and more in the like mainstream sports media landscape. But you're right, Canada does a much better job. I mean, anytime you're in Canada, and I don't know how often you've been in Canada, but I just think about all the trips I took to Canada with the Blackhawks the last couple of years. Every time we're in Canada, I can watch major junior games all over. Like in the hotel, you might only get 25 channels, and like 7 of them are hockey games. That's their sport, even though it's not technically their national sport, which I remember from like my 3rd grade Flag Day in elementary school. I was Canada for Flag Day, and I remember that their national sport is lacrosse, which is kind of funny. But I just look, I give Canada their flowers for that last night, but boy, did USA Hockey and did the Americans leave something on the table in a time of massive importance. And there's a lot of people that think that the NTDP is also going to suffer with this new landscape. They think they're going to lose some of their top players to the CHL. And after last night, I'm like, wow, I never thought that could actually happen, but maybe it will. Now, granted, I still believe in the national development team. I think it's not just about playing 75 games. It's about the off ice. It's about the nutrition. Like the national development team in USA Hockey does a great job of putting together a 2-year program to really develop you. Like they are a development team. They don't play 85 games like you play during the course of a major junior schedule. And, some people practice is more important. Gym time is more important, all that. But again, I just, and I see what you're saying, Darcy, in the chat, like Bob McKenzie hypes up him. Listen, I think that whether it's him, whether it's Jeff Marek, whether it's like, they talk about the high-end American prospects. I don't think that they just look at the Canadian prospects. Like, this is not meant to point fingers.
It's not on TV.
And this is not meant to point fingers at the Canadians whatsoever. I am strictly talking about my disappointment in USA Hockey as I sit here in my USA Hockey hat and my, of course, I have a mug here that's an American flag mug, and that was not on purpose because we didn't decide that I was going. I was basically just venting about this to Vic and Johnny. This was not supposed to be part of the show. And then they were like, let's just start with this, Colby, because you're all sorts of fired up about it. So again, the night's over. Canada wins that game in a big fashion. I saw our colleague Jeff Marek was there at the game. I actually thought about asking him to come on today, but I figured we've had him on quite a bit, and we had other things that we wanted to get to today. We don't need to do a whole show about this. We've been talking so much about this as of late, but anyways, just disappointed. And I'm sure I'm gonna catch flack for this, by the way, but I don't really care, Johnny.
Whatever.
I really don't care.
If you catch flack for it, but you're not in the wrong, then what's the matter with that, right? I mean, listen, Colby, I'm an American guy, and I didn't even tune into that game last night. Like, maybe that's my own flaw, but what
did you know?
I saw people tweeting about it yesterday that it was.
But did you know it was on NHL Network? Like, did you know it was right there?
I did not know it was on NHL Network.
So and a lot of people don't even get NHL Network, right? Like, why not work out a deal with ESPN Plus? Get that game on ESPN Plus. It's just short-sighted. And I get it. It's easier than just snapping your fingers and making these things happen. But guys, get around the table. Things are a little bit of a I can't curse because Bet365 is on the screen right now.
And we'll move it off in a second.
But get it off the screen, Vic, because I really need to curse to get my point home here. But it's a shit show right now, okay? It's a total shit show out there right now. And look, Jeremiah, who's as big a hockey fan as I've ever met in my entire life, okay, who's got so many time zones behind that he could basically watch hockey all day, every day, he couldn't watch the game. Right. And I guarantee you he would have, because there's only two NHL games on last night. They weren't exactly barn burners. You know, I although I didn't watch the Utah game, I watched the Boston game.
Yeah,
but
same.
I'll say that wasn't a barn burner. So again, leaving something to be desired would probably be the nicest way I could put it. I hope somebody in the offices in Colorado Springs has a bell go off in their head and say, geez, a little bit of a missed opportunity here. Let's get our act together.
Yeah, no, 100%. Very well said and very passionately said, Colby. Great stuff. But let's move into our next topic because we have a lot to talk about before we bring on our guest, Nate Thompson. But before we move on here to the teams that might fall out of the playoffs, let's talk about our sponsor, Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care made in Italy since 1948. Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Proraso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps, Hockey15. Vic, let's get the standings on the screen right now so everyone can take a look at what we're currently seeing in the NHL as far as the standings go, which teams are in the playoffs right now. Here's a look at the Eastern Conference. We'll start in the Met. The Devils in first, Carolina in second, and Washington in third. In the Atlantic, Toronto in first, Florida in second, Tampa Bay in third, and then the wild card teams are the New York Rangers and the Buffalo Sabres. I think we can both agree that the Atlantic will probably stay with those 3 teams throughout the remainder of the season. I don't see anyone jumping Tampa, Florida, or Toronto in the standings. Colby, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're looking at I think all 6 of those teams are playoff teams, as long as Washington can weather the storm. But they've shown me nothing to think that they can't. So, like, I think those 6 teams are a lock. Believe it or not, Johnny, I think 7 of the 8 teams are a lock for the playoffs.
I mean, I agree. I mean, we all know which team that we're going to say is probably going to fall out, right? I think that's the obvious one in this case. But I do think the Rangers find their way back into the top 3 in the Met. I do.
Absolutely. I mean, look, whether it's the top 3 or the wild card, the Rangers are a playoff team. I mean, look at how lackluster they've played and look at the results that they've had. Like, you can't, everybody who's, reading don't jump books for the New York Rangers right now are just, listen, I get it. The passion is there, but like everybody I talk to, including Nate Thompson, and we'll talk about this when he gets on here. This is a guy who played 950-ish NHL games, and he's sitting there going, the Rangers are going to be fine. Like, everybody you talk to that either plays or works in the National Hockey League is like, the Rangers are going to be okay. They're not saying the Rangers are going to be a Stanley Cup champion, but they're not looking at this as the sky is falling as Rangers fans are right now.
Listen, I don't know if it's the sky is falling. I think it's just like, we want change. I think that's really what it is mostly of. Like, I don't think Ranger fans are going to sit here and say they're going to miss the playoffs. But
it's not a video game. It's just not a video game. And making change is not as easy as people think it is, because this isn't be a GM mode on NHL 2024. So I do believe the Bruins are going to be a playoff team this year.
You do?
I think the Bruins are going to be a playoff team this year.
What makes you believe that?
I'll tell you what makes me believe that. I think Don Sweeney is going to go out and find some offensive help.
Well, they need it because they're like the worst offensive team in the league right now.
But just watching them last night, I mean, like, first off, I like seeing Mason Lohrei on the top pair with Charlie McAvoy.
He played well last night, I thought.
You didn't see that with Jim Montgomery. Okay, Mason Lohrei was playing a little bit of third pair, a little bit of second pair. He was in and out of the lineup early in the season. I think you just got to get that kid on the top pair, and you need to let that kid play hockey. Okay, and he's going to make some mistakes, but he's going to have more in the plus column than the negative column, Lohrei, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's going to put more tickets in than you're going to pull out when he does make those young mistakes. Because remember, like, this guy doesn't have a ton of NHL experience under his belt, so he's only going to continue to get better. But Look, do I think the Bruins are a full-on contender? Absolutely not. But
Yeah.
I think that they're a playoff team. And watching them last night, look, they had a lot of scoring opportunities. Now their power play was flat. And the one thing that I don't understand, Pasta is just forcing plays on the power
through the
play.
middle,
Like
through the middle, right? He's not shooting. He's not
he
shooting.
wants that bumper play and he wants that seam pass so bad. And he's forcing it when it's just not available. And again, teams are they understand that that's the threat, right? Like Pasta either shooting he's going to be able to shoot the puck, right? 5-on-4, you're going to be able to shoot the puck, but they're like, but we're going to take away his ability to make plays. And he's kind of doing that fake shot into the bumper, fake shot, try to go through the seam, and it's not working. And then on top of it, like Kevin Lankinen played really well last night. I mean, he came up with
money,
big time saves, and the Bruins had rebound after rebound. I mean, they just couldn't bury. I mean, that's pretty much the theme of their season. But I still think they find themselves into the playoffs, into one of those wild card teams at least, Johnny.
I'm looking right now. Boston, the last time because I saw a comment in our chat from Jax, Boston can't score goals. When was the last time they scored 3+ goals? And just looking here, they've only scored 3 goals or more twice in their last 10 games. The last time they did it was on the road at St. Louis on November 12th. So it's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 games since they've scored 3 goals, which is pretty bad, man. I mean, the pucks just aren't going in for Boston. And I saw Merles also say that the Bruins are the new Islanders. They're so boring. And those are the 2 teams that I wanted to compare, because I don't think either of those 2 teams are making the playoffs, to be honest. They're both not scoring, and they actually play each other tonight. And I had friends who said, like, we should go to the Bruins Islander game for Thanksgiving Eve. And I was like, I'd rather literally do anything else than go watch that game tonight. That is a flat out mid-off right now between these 2 teams. But right now, Boston's power play is at 12.4%, dead last in the league, which is crazy to think about because of a guy like David Pastrnak. They're 32nd in scoring, 2.22 goals per game, 14th in high danger chances, 11.47 per game. And I don't know, like, what coach, what system, what they can do inside that room that automatically just puts the puck in the back of the net. Like,
Look,
you're the one. What? But it's consistent.
A lot of it is personal. A lot of it is personnel. Like Justin Brazeau is on your second line right now.
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. You're always the one who says, like, by 20 games, we know who they are. So what makes you think they're just going to start scoring?
Well, I'm not saying they're going to start scoring 6 and 7 goals a game, but I do like the pieces they have on their back end. I do like their goaltender. I do have faith that their goaltender it will get himself back to a, Vezina caliber level. I mean, listen, he lets up 1 goal last night. Now, granted, I think Vancouver had they finished that game with 16 shots.
Something like that, yeah, super low.
Something very, very low. But I still like Lorai and McAvoy. I like Carlo. I think as long as Zadorov is on your third pair, he's a good piece. And I think Peake and Wotherspoon kind of go back and forth. And right now, Lindholm is out. So I believe in their back end and their goaltending. I think it's good enough to get them into the playoffs. But they need to go out and find one, like, high risk, high reward type of forward and play them with David Pastrnak, because you can't have Brazeau on your second line. You're 6-on-5 at the end of the game, and you've got Elias Lindholm out on the ice, and like he's not an offensive player anymore.
I got so many texts yesterday about from Bruins people about Chris Kreider and how great it would be for the Bruins to get Chris Kreider.
Well, he's great. Listen, Kreider's great on the power play. I mean, he is great. Like, think about how many more goals Pasta scores if you have Kreider standing in front of the net. But I think it's a different scenario, because you look at the way Adam Fox utilizes Kreider. You look at the way the flanks, whether it's Panarin or whether it's, it's a Benachet, like the way they utilize Kreider, where they get pucks into the front of the net. And the Bruins don't really have that on their power play. I think Marchand is pretty good at getting pucks into the net, but Charlie McAvoy is an in and out type of guy. Like, he doesn't play the way Adam Fox plays. He doesn't stay out at the blue line. He dives in, he dives out, he ends up behind the net, below the goal line. Like, he's more of like a Scott Niedermayer type of power play player than that pure power play quarterback. And for the most part in his career, Pasta's been a shooter. Like, he's just letting them fly. They don't have the personnel to just kind of lob pucks into Kreider. Like, the Rangers at times will literally throw like lob plays into Kreider at the net, and they've worked so well for years. So I don't know that that's the answer. I don't know that the Bruins are looking for a guy with heavy feet, like an older player that have heavy feet. But look,
well, when your power play is worse in the league and you can get a net front guy like Kreider, it seems like it's
who are you giving up for Kreider? I mean, that would be,
there's no one on Boston that I want in return.
And you've got Merkulov in the minors, but he hasn't really become anything. Yeah. I think Matthew Patra is an interesting prospect. I think he was rushed into the National Hockey League last year, and so now I think his development path has gotten kind of wobbly, we'll call it. Mm-hmm. They have Lysell, but he hasn't really proven anything.
It's Trent Frederick.
Yeah, well, I don't know though. Are you making that trade, Trent Frederick for Chris Kreider, straight up? Like, I don't know about that. Like, yeah, Fredericks is a UFA after this year. Well, that's the thing with Boston. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of their forwards. 9 of their forwards are UFA or RFA after this year, including Brad Marchand. So, I mean, maybe they sit down and they have a conversation and they're like, you know what? We're not going to do anything because this offseason we have the opportunity and we're going to have the amount of cap space to go in and bring in. I mean, they only have $29 million in players under contract at the forward position next year. 29. Yeah. And their D-core, which is pretty much locked up other than Lori, who's an RFA, is $28.6 million committed next season. So add in another, I don't know, let's call it 3.5 bridge deal for Mason Lori. Maybe he gets between 2.5 and 3.5 on like a 2-year deal. So let's say 31 to 32 million on your back end, 30 million for your forwards. So that's, let's say, roughly $60 million. You basically have what, 45 maybe million dollars to go out and sign 8 forwards. That's pretty good. I mean, that's, 8 times 6 is 48. So you got a little under, let's say, $6 million per guy. Obviously that's not how it would go because it's not that, divvied up, but there's a lot of opportunity for the Bruins to reshape their entire forward group next year. So I don't know if it's worth doing anything crazy right now.
No, I agree. And honestly, there's another team I want to get to. So I think we should save the Western Conference for after we're done with Nate Thompson, because I want to talk about this other team too. That listen, people might think I'm going to say this team just for like conversation, but it's not for conversation at all, because that second wild card spot in the East right now, to me, is fully up for grabs. And I got to be honest, I know they haven't been very consistent, but I think if their goalie can figure it out and just catch a little bit of a streak, this team could be good. And I'm curious to see if you know where I'm going with this.
I mean, you can't possibly be talking about the Flyers, can you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, because Fedotov is never going to figure it out.
No, I'm not talking about the Flyers.
He is like, I cannot believe how many holes that guy has. I mean, it's like, I feel bad watching him play in the NHL. Mm-hmm. So I guess you're talking about Ottawa then, maybe. I would assume
I'm talking about Ottawa. Yeah,
because you have Linus Ullmark, who we know has been
he's been the problem. He's been the problem right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's never a guarantee when you trade for a player it's going to be smooth. I always say, kind of needs 6 months. And Jeremiah, I disagree with you. The last game, the Flyers that they lost to Vegas, Fedotov was not decent. I very much disagree with that premise. If you watch that Vegas game, he was bad. But look, I always say this, you got to give a guy 6 months when he gets traded until you really know if it's going to work or not. I think it's 6 months. I know people hate to hear that, but I just think it's a reality.
But Ullmark is the guy too, where if he gets hot, he gets hot. You know what I mean? We've seen it in Boston where, he's letting up 2 or less for a streak of 10 games. And right now, to me, I've watched Ottawa play a decent amount. That game against Calgary, I tuned in a little bit here and there, their last game. But when they came to New York, like they were a solid team. Like they limit their opponent to chances. Like, you know, they're I think top 5 or top 8 maybe in the NHL right now in a lot of defensive metrics, but the pucks are going in because the goaltending hasn't been as consistent. And Ottawa has guys that can score goals. Their power play scores. Like they get production, but right now they're just too inconsistent in net to be good. That's why they're losing games. So if Omar can turn this thing around for Ottawa, like I do think they can take that second wild card spot because they've shown more offensively to me than the Bruins, than the Islanders, like than the Flyers at times too. And Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, like you know, we're seeing all these I guess what's the lack of a better term? Emotion. There's so much emotion out of Ottawa.
Didn't Frank say that Norris was potentially on the trading block? Wasn't that a Frank Saravalli report?
Yeah, it was. But again, like I just think Ottawa plays with a little more.
You think that moves Shane Pinto up into that second line center role if they were to move on from Norris, give him a little bit of opportunity with like Batherson and Giroux on that second line?
Would have to think so, yeah. And Adam Gaudette, former Hobey Baker winner, has gotten some time on that first line. I mean,
he has been
9 goals this year. Yeah, he's got 9
Gaudette
goals.
Gaudette was in Chicago when I was. He's a really good guy. Northeastern Husky.
I played against him my first 2 years. He was nasty.
Hell of a college player. Really nice guy too. Like got to know him a little bit when I was working in Chicago, and a really, really sweet guy. Good to see he's kind of found his way because I think he went to Toronto. He was in and out of the minors in Toronto. He's kind of moved around a little bit, but certainly has caught a little bit of lightning in the bottle. I don't know, though, John. I really don't. Until Ottawa gives me a reason to have faith in them, it's hard for me to be faithful to them. You're still reeling from your bet last year of
that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not trying to sound like I'm making like a conversation out of nothing, but like also looking at the numbers, like they kind of support it. Like I just pulled it up here. Like Ottawa right now, 5th best shots against and 5th best high danger chances allowed, 5th best power play at 28%, 8th best expected goals percentage at 5-on-5, 6th best high danger chances at 5-on-5. Like those numbers support that, you know, maybe they're just underplaying what they should be getting at, you know, scoring 3.14 goals per game, but Ullmark, his numbers just haven't been good enough to get them wins. And again, like I would, you know, I'm not like the biggest numbers guy, but if you make an argument like this, I feel like you have to pull up the numbers to support it. And the numbers support the argument that Ottawa, if they get better goaltending, like should be right there.
I just think right now they're too inconsistent. And when you're not in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving, inconsistency is a massive problem because you're going to have to reel off wins in bunches if you want to become a playoff team when you're not in one to start the year. I mean, you can't make the playoffs the first 3 months or so of the season, but you can sort of put yourself in a situation to miss the playoffs. And I don't know if you're going to get the consistency you need out of this team. I really don't. I've yet to see it. I've yet to feel confident that they can do it. If they prove me otherwise, I'll change my tune and I'll say, okay, now we've seen it a little bit. But for now, I disagree with you. I do not expect to see it.
Totally fair. But that second wildcard spot, I think we both agree those first 7 spots are pretty much locked in, and that second wildcard spot is up for grabs.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, and Vic put this in I think just over 75% of the teams.
Yeah, I said that right off the hop.
That are in a playoff spot. Yeah, no, I understand. And then, so basically, if we go by the 80% rule, 3 teams that are in now will miss it, right? So who are those 3 teams going to be?
I'm not comfortable taking any of these teams out for who's not in right now. I don't think anyone is jumping Carolina or New Jersey. I don't think anyone is jumping Toronto, Florida, or Tampa, all 3 of those teams. I mean, like maybe Washington drops out, the Rangers drop out. Like Buffalo is probably the best guess of a team that will drop out. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Boston, the Islanders, and Ottawa, or Columbus, or Philly are going to make the playoffs over the Capitals and Rangers. Like that's not me.
Well, it does include the West too.
That's fair. That's fair.
I should have added the fact that 3 of the teams that are now in between the East and the West. So maybe it's 1 from the East, 2 from the West, 2 from the West, 1 from the East. Who knows? But there is a lot of hockey left, and you know, as long as you keep posting those late night videos from your roof in the dark. I hope you continue to wear your penis hat. So that'll, that'll help. So look, let's get to the Western Conference while we wait for Nate Thompson.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna have enough time to really jump into the West. I think we should do our worst team of the week.
We always could just include Nate in the conversation.
Okay,
he does live in the West. He is going to be coming to us from California, so 6:30 in the morning. And he could be a few minutes late because he's a solo dad for the most part, and he's got a child that is actually born the exact same day as my daughter. Our daughters were born the same day, which is awesome. So we're pretty much always talking, sharing stories and this and that, always laughing with each other. So it is kind of funny how you couldn't get him to commit to the show. And I literally did. I had to step in and text him, and he texted me back within 30 seconds and was like, yeah, I'll come at 6:30. And then you even messaged him, and you were all butthurt because he responded to me and he didn't respond to you. And
two-timing little slut.
You should be, you shouldn't use that word. I don't like that word, but you shouldn't. I'm just kidding. Words.
I meant it in an endearing way, not in a direct
way.
way.
Listen, sticks and stones, buddy. Words don't hurt you. But it was kind of perfect that he responded to me and not to you. Well, I thought our listeners would like that.
Well, we'll hear from him when he hops on. But before we go any further, I just want to talk about one of our sponsors, Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important, and Fountain Tire specializes in tire and auto service, and you don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service because of Fountain Tire. They do both. They'll treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle, and if you need new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle, stop into Fountain Tire and they'll sort you out. And right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear till December 14th, plus save $50 or more on any service of $150 with some restrictions applying. So stop into Fountain Tire or make an appointment. Check out fountaintire.com. And Colby, let's get into the Western Conference because Nate's not here yet. And if there's one
just
team
so
right now,
if he does no show, well, it's still your fault because you were the idea.
He's not no showing. He texted me before that. He didn't get the email, so it's actually on Vic right now. This is a Vic
even better, better. Love that. Even better.
Is a big problem.
Even better.
But let's look at the Western Conference. Again, I think the Central for the most part is locked up. Minnesota, I could see dropping back to a wild card spot with Colorado taking, one of those 3 spots in the Central. Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado feels like it's always the top 3 in that division. And I don't think Minnesota is going to drop out of the playoffs, but I could see them moving back a little bit. The Atlantic, Vegas, Calgary, and Vancouver, I think this can get completely scattered. I would say it's going to end up being, Vegas, Edmonton, and probably like LA and it says the Atlantic still, Vic. So I don't know if we messed up there with the Pacific, but they have a dash too quick for Vic.
Vic's still on his bachelor party.
Yeah, too quick for Vic.
Missing details, missing emails. Wake up, pal. It's 9:33. The show's been live for 33 minutes, Vic. So it'd be great if you could get your shit together here, bud.
But Frank on the show yesterday said he has Calgary making the playoffs. I disagree. I don't think they're going to make it. I just don't think they can sustain this. They're not scoring goals really either, and they're getting goaltending sure from Dustin Wolf and who's their backup? Vladar, I believe, is their backup. But I don't see their lack of production. Like they're playing to me like an ECAC hockey team. Like they're winning games 3-2. It's super tight. But the goal scoring and the lack of it and the offensive production, like you go down their lineup, I think Rasmus Anderson leads their team in points right now with 13 points in 22 games. Like Huberdeau, 12 points in 22 games. Kadri, 12 points in 22 games. Like I don't know if this is sustainable for Calgary. I don't know how good the goaltending will continue to be from Dustin Wolf.
Look, I don't watch a lot of. I have not watched a lot of Calgary.
I just have recency bias because of the Rangers last week. Like
I'm gonna let you lead the charge on the Calgary talk. But one thing we can ask Nate about is we can ask Nate about the LA Kings because he's worked for the LA Kings and he's done some television for the LA Kings, and so he's a perfect guy to ask because you and I were talking about this and you said to me even like I really don't see much of the LA Kings and we know they made the decision to get away from the 1-3-1 this year. They've got the new coach. It looks like they've got a young emerging superstar in Brandt, that defenseman. They will get Drew Doughty back, and There's only one thing that happens to your hockey team when Drew Doughty gets backed. It's that they get better. So I think LA is a playoff team. I think they're a good team. I've seen them be a good team this year, but it's kind of perfect timing to bring Nate onto the show because we can kind of start with the LA Kings. And thanks for coming to us so early this morning, Nate. We know 6:30 a.m. I'm sure YY's rearing ready to go this early, right?
Oh yeah, she was ready to rock this morning, but that's all right. I mean, I'm up and let's talk hockey, fellas.
You had Vic freaking out that you didn't get his email, so I don't know if there's an apology. I think you might have sent the wrong one, or Colby, you sent the wrong one to Vic. He's like texting us like, "See, I told you he got the email. You guys sent me 2 different ones."
It's Vic's fault. Just leave.
I definitely did not get an email, but it's okay. I figured it out, so
yeah,
it's all good.
It's always Vic's fault. But Nate, you're the perfect guy to talk.
Okay. You guys hear me okay right now?
Yeah, we got you. You're the perfect guy to talk LA, and being fully transparent, like this Kings team right now just doesn't really excite me. I'm not staying up late night to watch the LA Kings when I can watch Edmonton or Vancouver and all these other teams out west. Like, why should I be tuning into LA right now? Tell me like 1 or 2 reasons why they're exciting and why they're a definite playoff team.
Well, I think you look at their start. I mean, first off, I think they've had a pretty good start. I think also you look at some of their young players. I mean, you guys just mentioned Brandt Clark.
Yeah.
I had the privilege to coach him last year when I was with Ontario, and you can just see it. This guy's hockey IQ, his confidence, how much he wants the puck. Having him now and seeing what he's doing, and them not having Drew Doughty, it's a pretty good sign. And I think you have to go even further with some of the young guys they have, like Alex Turcotte's been really good for them this year.
Ferrier.
Laferriere, a lot of these young guys, and I think that's a good sign when you have all the other core nucleus of guys and guys that are still producing. I think there's some guys like Quentin Byfield, Phil Deneau, Fiala, some guys that I think are underachieving a little bit, and I think that's probably why you're not hearing as much about them. I think, and I think that they're in a really good division. I mean, that division, there's a lot of parity, and it's kind of up for grabs in the Pacific Division, but I do think the Kings this year more so than last year. Last year they ran that 1-3-1 you're just talking about, and maybe that's what you have. You have that vision in your head right now of them doing the 1-3-1, Johnny. I think that's might be what it is. You're just worried about the 1-3-1,
which was a suffocating way to play. Like I think back to being between the benches in Chicago and LA coming to town and like getting through half the game. And the Blackhawks couldn't get through the neutral zone clean one time. I mean, that system, it's so effective, but it wears players down like mentally. And it's hard to do it for 82 games, wire to wire. But when you do it, it's miserable to play against.
Yeah, it really is hard to play against. And I've got when I played in Tampa, we played the 1-3-1. You remember when
I very much do remember that playoff series. Yep.
Playoff series, so we played the 1-3-1, and it is effective, but it's just I guess it's not sexy, right? It's not sexy for a player to stand there and wait for someone to come at him and then jump at him. I mean, that's basically what the 1-3-1 is. But I do think the Kings have a good team. I like their team more so than last year. I like
uniforms are sexy.
What's that?
Uniforms are sexy.
The uniforms are sexy.
They are great looking uniforms, no doubt about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I like the Kings. I think that there's still some things that they are missing. I mean, like a lot of other teams at this time of year. But I think they're heading in the right direction, and I do think Jim Hiller has done a really good job this year.
I also think last year a big part of their excitement was like the breakout of Quentin Byfield, and I feel like right now you're not seeing much about him, right? Like he's been a little bit quieter this year, and I think that's like maybe what's taking away from the glamour. Is that Quentin Byfield's been a little bit quieter. I think he got dropped down in the lineup too, right? Like he's playing third line now. He was up a little bit earlier. What's going on?
I mean, they've been shuffling the lines a little bit. I mean, and last game, I watched a little bit of last game. They played San Jose. It was one of those games I think that you just kind of throw away.
You burn the tape. You burn the tape for that one.
Tape. I mean, when I was watching the first period and you're letting 2 breakaways in the first 3 minutes, it's not a good start. So, and I think honestly, they were looking to tonight's game, which is they're playing against Winnipeg Jets, which is going to be a pretty good game. So I think probably a good benchmark for them. But I think that there's some things that they have to get better at, but I do think that they're a good hockey team that they will make the playoffs.
So Nate, you have this unique sort of perspective, having spent we were talking about this, but between playoffs and regular season, we're talking 950 game player in the National Hockey League. You worked in player development last year for the LA Kings. Now you do a little bit of TV. So you're kind of seeing it from all the different sides of the organization. And we talk on this show so often about development and how it's not a straight line, and how you need to see a guy's larger body of work. And we shouldn't just judge them from 20 game stretch or from even one season stretch. Johnny,
that's a Colby thing, not a me thing. It's not a we
okay,
thing.
That's true. Johnny, a guy has 3 good games and Johnny's ready to give him the MVP. But with
Zach
Quinton
Colby
Byfield,
with like Gretzky the other night.
with Quinton Byfield in particular, Nate, with your sort of now playing and development background, are you confident that he becomes what we saw last year on a more long-term basis, and that this is just kind of more of a maybe a dip on the roller coaster that we know a career can be?
Yeah, I think he's got all the ability in the world. I mean, if you see how big he is, I think he's still filling into his body, which is kind of crazy. And for how well he skates and makes plays. And I do think this is just a little dip in his play right now. I do think that he'll get back to playing how he was last season. And last season, you saw the flashes, you saw how good he was. And even at the beginning of this season, there have been some games where when he's on, he kind of takes over a game just with how big he is, how well he skates, the plays he can make. So I think it'll be okay. I think, they gave him a pretty good contract. So
he better.
It's exactly. It's different expectations now. It's not, this is a project. It's now you're the man and you got to show up and you got to produce. So I think with having the guys that surround him and their core leadership guys and guys like Kopitar and all these guys that have been around, I think he'll be okay.
Nate, I don't want to get away from the Kings, but there's definitely some other things that I want to ask you about. And, one thing off the top of my mind that I'm super curious to hear from you about is, something that we don't often see. And right now there's a lot of talks with the Rangers and, making a trade for Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider and whatnot. But you were on that Tampa team when the Rangers traded Ryan Callahan for Marty St. Louis, a captain for captain swap, which we never really see in the NHL. I think the last captain I remember, really in a significant trade might have been Shea Weber for PK Subban. That's one that stands out to me. But can you tell us about what the Tampa room was like on that day where St. Louis goes for Callahan, and just how many games it may have took to get used to that, or what the adjustment was like when your captain gets traded for another captain?
Yeah, that was quite the situation back then. I mean, and part of the reason I don't think anyone understands was that year was also, I think it was the Olympics and Team Canada, I think, or World. I can't remember which one it was going on that year.
2014. Yeah, I think that's Sochi.
Yeah, it was Sochi. And Steve Eisman was our general manager and didn't pick Marty originally for Team Canada.
Oh boy.
And at that time, Marty was also leading the league in points. I think he was top 3, top 4. And when that happens, your own general manager doesn't pick you for the team that I think there was some
ruffled feathers
on definitely on one side. And that was it. I think from then on, Marty got traded to New York, and we got Cali, which was great. I mean, honestly, both great guys. It was tough. I think it was tough to lose a guy like Marty, but we knew he had to do what he had to do for himself at the end of the day. And, we got a great guy, a great leader, and a great player in return. That's just the nature of the business sometimes. So what are you going to do? But it was an interesting situation, a little bit dicey at times after Marty didn't make it, but he did end up going anyways because I think someone got hurt and he ended up being on the team. But that was a long time ago.
But let me ask if you could go back and try to remember, and it's probably hard because you did have such a long career, but what was the dressing room actually like the next day? I mean, was there any excitement? Was it holy shit? Was it like a morgue? I mean, because
he's
that
also
is
a lightning legend at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a bone chilling trade, I would think, And so what was the locker room like?
It was sad, right? It was kind of, we're losing Marty, not just the player, but the person. I mean, the guy was so funny. He was a great, just a great guy in the room, hilarious. I mean, everything, he was kind of like a little bit of a father figure for a lot of us because we were younger guys. So having him get traded to New York was a little tough. But at the same time, you have to, Colby, that's how it goes. You kind of have to have amnesia about it. You get to sulk about it, you get to talk about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we got to move on. We got a new guy, we got a next game to play. And that's just unfortunately and fortunately, that's just the way it is.
Can't believe
was Marty your coach? Was Marty your coach in Montreal when you went to Montreal? Was he the assistant coach? Maybe no, he hadn't been there yet.
But we always joked around that Marty was all our coaches when we played with him, though. he was that guy where he'd be in between the periods and be up on the whiteboard showing us stuff in his full gear. So
he was Monix.
Yeah, we were never surprised that he would end up coaching. He's just one of those guys that just so passionate about it. But yeah, he was everybody's coach when we played with him.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And kind of like on that note, obviously you played with a ton of incredible players in the NHL. I'm curious if there's one guy that stands out to you as like the most underrated that you played with.
The most underrated player. Man,
I have one in mind that is talked about now currently, but
tell me.
Who is it?
Kyle Connor. You were in Winnipeg I know it was a short stint, but Kyle
Connor
seems to be the guy right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how underrated he is. I mean, I thought he's a stud. I mean, this guy produces every single year. And the Jets are making me look really good because I picked him to finish first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's Kyle Connor. I mean, how many he averages has to get over
35 plus. Yeah.
35 plus every year. I mean, yeah, I mean, this guy's a stud. But, I mean, for me, most underrated player I played with, other guys, I mean, in his prime, I guess, when he won the Selke, Couturier, I mean, he wasn't talked about a lot. And he was a guy. I mean, Colby, you got to see him a ton.
Yeah.
Seeing a guy like that when he was going, it was like, wow, this guy's he's doing everything right. He was like a Bergeron-esque, to be honest, a little bit. So, I think he was one of them. I mean,
there's started finding that scoring touch a little bit before he dealt with those injuries, and I still will always go to bat for him. I was like, I've agreed with a lot of what John Tortorella has done in Philadelphia, and I think he's done a lot of good things. But that one was one that I got on this show for days and days and days and questioned sitting him twice. And I felt like that they bumbled that. I felt like the messaging could have been, this is just a rest and reset for a guy who's dealt with things that people can't even wrap their head around to then get back out on the ice in the National Hockey League. So big Sean Couturier guy here, professionally and personally. I think the world of that guy. Yeah,
me too. I do. And to talk about another underrated guy, Johnny, I think that I did go to Winnipeg, I think it's Mark Scheifele. I think that's another player that probably right now too not talked about enough. I mean, what he's doing on that team, what that whole team's doing, to be honest. I mean, they look primed to make a pretty deep run.
Scheifele making Team Canada, Four Nations. I've seen his name like pop up here and there.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know, but that you know how that goes. I mean, that team is so stacked. I mean, they could send two teams. So I don't know. I maybe it's possible he gets a look, but I wouldn't have him on the roster right now. We're just without what do they have everyone else, So, but who knows? With Mark Stone being injured now, I mean, things might change.
Well, Nate, we have a very, very dedicated listener to the show. His name is Jeremiah Maxwell. He says, Nate Thompson, Anchorage, Alaska legend. He actually he listens and watches our show every day from Alaska.
Really?
And he'll even send us pictures of like when it's like we still have sun and beautiful weather, and it'll be like snowing out of his backyard. Also, he's up very early in the morning to listen to this show. He's a big Daily Face-Off supporter. He's with our show. He's with Frank Saravalli's show at noon. I would guess he'll be listening to Jeff Merrick and watching Jeff Merrick's show at 3 p.m. So big Alaska guy. Met him at the Frozen Four last year. He's got a beard down to like the middle of his chest, but he loves his Alaska boys. Always talking about you. He's always giving love to David Carl, Matt Carl, those other Alaska legends. So yeah. I had to tell you about him. He's in our chat. He's always super active and big Alaska guy, Jeremiah. He's a DFO legend, really.
Yeah. Hey, Jeremiah. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. Tough to transition from there, I feel like. But Nate, I actually, you guys brought up that 2011 series where Tampa played the 1-3-1, and I know you do a lot of work with the empty netters guys. And I heard on their most recent show, actually, they had Kevin BX on and Colby. This is kind of going to stir the pot with you a bit too, I think, because you guys were both involved in that series. Kevin BX has said on their show.
I wasn't really that involved. I was a spectator.
You were there.
For that
you were part
series.
of it.
I was a spectator watching Nate be a monster all for 2 weeks. But go on with your question, Johnny.
BX has said on the show, I thought we would have matched up much better against Tampa had we played Tampa in the Stanley Cup final. He said Boston was the meanest team. And, Vancouver that year, I guess, was the most hated team because they had a lot of like pests and rats and shit. But Boston, they just bullied you. And Vancouver, I guess in BX's mind, he said they could have had their way with Tampa more than they could have with Boston, and that Boston bullied them. So I'm curious what you would have thought had you played Vancouver in the final. I mean, obviously it's easy to go back and say like, yeah, we probably would have beat them, but what that matchup would have looked like in Colby, obviously.
Well, let me just say this first. But like Tampa went toe to toe when it came to a physical standpoint in that series. Like there was yes, our team bullied the Vancouver Canucks because they had a lot of soft players. There was no bullying against Tampa Bay. I mean, that series was like, a war of attrition. That was like, we run a 3-yard slant and then 2 running plays and they stuff us on 4th down. And I mean, that went back and forth about as close as it could be all series. And I tell Nate about this all the time. The amount of times Nate came up in pre-scout meetings, because as an extra player, they always had us acting as the pre-scout on practice days, and Nate as a penalty killer and a kind of was as a defensive 200-foot type of player in that series. Your name came up all the time just because they wanted to keep our guys away from you because of the way that you were playing in that series. But I vehemently disagree with Kevin BX's comment there, and I'll let you take it, Nate. Obviously, you're on that team.
Yeah, I think I disagree with Juice as well. I think there was a misconception of us also because our power play was so good, and we were considered, I think offensively, we were a good team, obviously, but I think we were so good defensively as well because of that 1-3-1, because of the way we played, and we had some guys that played hard and just like the Bruins. But we believe that if we beat Boston, we could win the Cup. And people forget too, we were down 3-1 to Pittsburgh in the first round that year. And we came back. We actually won. We won 8 games in a row in the playoffs.
Wow.
We won the 4 games in a row against Pittsburgh. Then we swept Washington, and who won the President's Trophy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we won the first game in Boston. So we won 8 games in a row. So we had the total belief that, if we could beat the Bruins, we were going to win the Cup. So I really don't agree with Juice. I mean, I guess I do and I don't. I guess they might have matched up with us better in a sense on paper
Boston. Yeah.
than Boston, but I don't know if it would have been a better matchup for them to win the Cup. We had a team that was really deep, and people forget too. I mean, Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Bruins, it was a 1-0 game, and not one penalty was called. Not one.
Was that the Krejci like backdoor play to Horton?
Yeah,
right?
It was ironically they went right through our 1-3-1.
The only time all series.
Ironically, that's what happened, and they ended up, that was it. And they scored about 6 minutes left, I think it was. And that one stings because I remember I just got off the ice, and next thing you know, we get a 1-3-1, they scored right away. So that's shoulda, woulda, coulda, but
yeah,
great series, and I don't think I agree with Juice on that one.
Was that the closest you ever were?
No, when I was in Anaheim too, that was another one, and I could play Kevin BX's side on this and say the same thing. I mean, we lost to Chicago 2015 in Game 7. We laid an egg in Game 7, but we were up 3-2 in the series, and they go on to play Tampa and win the Cup. And I remember Jonathan Toews coming out after that, I think the whole playoff round after they won the Cup, and he said that was, Anaheim by far was our hardest series. So, yeah, I've been close a few times. Another year when we lost in Nashville in the conference finals too. So 3 conference finals and no trips to the finals. But
damn. Yeah.
Well, Nate, before we let you go, because I do know you probably got to get back to parenting duty over there. There are a couple personal things I want to talk about with you. First off, 44 Concierge. It's a great company. It's a great concept. I remember when you guys started it. I actually talked to Jamie Carroll yesterday because he's coaching a kid in Illinois who he wants to get an opportunity with the junior team that I work with and coach here in my area. So we're gonna have I told Jamie, I'm like, do I need to watch film on this guy or can I just trust you? And he said, you can just trust me. And I do trust him. I do. He's not an overseller, but tell our listeners about 44 Concierge because I think it's such an awesome concept.
Yeah, I mean, it started when I was in Anaheim. Me and Jamie Carroll and another guy named Ben Gott. We started a concierge company. It was more so the idea of, helping guys out throughout the season. Guys that, guys are busy. Guys have stuff going on. They have lives. They have families. And, when you get traded or when you have to move or you need, help with certain things that, you don't want it to affect your play or whatever it is during the season. So, we started this concierge company and we have some guys in the NHL obviously. And we've been doing it for almost 7-8 years now. And it's been going good. And it's just a way for guys to, like you said, we want guys to be able to, focus on their careers and let us take care of all the other stuff basically, and it's a positive thing.
Well, I know I've been the beneficiary of some hard reservations and some concert tickets, amongst other things. So I know you're not the one dealing with it, but I'll thank you on the behalf of the rewards that myself and my family have reaped from it. So I will publicly thank you for those. And then your media career, which is really just kind of starting. I've seen you doing some LA Kings games. I know you're looking to get involved more, but what's that been like, and how have you enjoyed that so far?
If I can add to that too, Nate, the broadcasting camp in New York, if I can add to that, like that'd be cool to hear about.
Yeah, of course. It's been good. And to your question, I went to the NHL media broadcasting camp in July, and it was awesome. I mean, there was a current and other former players there. They had these modules set up with Eddie Olczyk, Brian Boucher, Kenny Albert, and Steve Levy. So it was awesome, to get to learn from all those guys who I think are the cream of the crop and the best of the best, right? So it was great to see how, there's a lot of things that go behind it people don't realize. And I didn't know either. So it was a lot of fun. And then now, like you said, I'm trying to get my foot in the door and, got to do a game with the Kings, which was great. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. It was funny. I was telling people the night before I did my first game with the Kings, it felt like I was getting ready for a game the next day a little bit. So it was a good feeling to get that back. And I'm enjoying it. And like I said before, I'm a rookie schmelt when it comes to it. So I'm just trying to get my, find my footing and get going with it.
I think I have to ask this question because I think we've all been in this situation. What was the one thing about like being on camera and talking the first time that like made you shit your pants the most?
I don't know if it was like made me shit my pants, but it was more so like I think
you're talking to a guy who changes diapers all day. I don't think he's gonna be that affected.
I'm not gonna flinch that. I think it was just how they have the screen in front of you and then you got to look at the camera. I think I was constantly like wanting to look down at the screen, but I had to like tell myself keep looking at that red dot on the camera. So I think it was just little things like that. I wasn't too nervous. I had nerves, but I wasn't like, oh my God, get me out of this. This is too much. So I had a lot of fun, and hopefully I get to do it more.
Well, and the girl that you did the game with, her name's Karen Bath, right?
Carlin Bath, yes.
Carlin.
Yeah, so I've known Carlin a long time. Her husband is one of the owners of Violent Gentlemen. So
oh wow, okay.
So there was already a familiarity with her, so that made it a lot easier. And we were just, as you just get up there and play catch and talk hockey. So it was a lot of fun.
And she, like I was gonna say, she's been doing it long enough that she's gonna make sure that she's throwing you some backdoor tap ins
Yeah,
and
she was teaming
getting you
up.
some easy getting you some easy ones early. Exactly. Get you feeling the puck a little bit is keeping it to hockey terms. So, well, look, we'll keep looking out for you on TV, Johnny.
We're not letting him go yet. I got one or two more.
He's got more.
He's a dad. You got to respect the fact
I'm
that
okay. I'm okay. It's all good.
all
What
right.
do you got?
Okay.
You got something about your Rangers or what's going on?
No. But Nate knows this about me, Colby, so it's fine. I don't even feel like I'm stepping.
Are you going to turn the lights off? Right?
There's a reason he texted me back so much quicker than he texted you back, Johnny. Okay.
And then do an Instagram post about how the Rangers are done and they're never going to make the playoffs.
Oh God, don't
trade everybody.
I'm Nate's bitch. But let me ask you two things because we have a very loyal. I don't know actually how loyal they are. I don't know if it's the right word, but we have a lot of Islander fan listeners, and I know you spent 2 years with the Islanders, and I wanted to bring up this tweet, Vic, if you can kind of cue it up here.
God.
I give Nate shit for this empty net all the time against the Rangers. Nate had a breakaway, and this was the tweet the Islanders in the offseason. This was from like 2 years ago, and Nate put me on his hater list, and then Colby, you commented. So rude. And this was before our show even started. So we have a little bit of a Twitter history, the three of us. But this is the empty net I was talking about right here. Nate has like a wide open net, probably 10 feet out. I don't know if it's going to play. Vic, what's going on here? I guess it's not working.
Johnny, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How many empty net goals have you scored in the National Hockey League?
0.
Okay. I just was curious. Maybe I was missing something.
He can take it. But no, seriously, back to the question though. Like, I know the Islanders were the early parts of your career, and I know you lived in like a house with like 4 guys at the time, right? Like it was a pretty cool experience for you and different. Vic, it's okay. It's fine.
There we go.
There's the other look at it.
Boy, that was tough.
You know what I think you were doing here, Nate? I think you were trying to bank this one and then get an assist on your own goal to pad your stats. I think that's probably what was going on.
I was dumping it with a purpose.
But do you have any Islander stories from like your early days that are worth sharing on here? Because I'd love to hear one. I know Ariel, who's like the most loyal Islander fan listener that we have, would probably love to hear one too.
Yeah, my first year there, we had a house, and it was myself. To start with myself, Bruno Gervais, Kyle Okposo, and then Josh Bailey made the team. He was only 19 at the time, and then Tim Jackman. I don't know if you guys remember Tim Jackman.
Yeah,
tough guy. Used to fight too. Played hard. Good fourth line guy. But yeah, we all lived in this big house in Roslyn Heights. 5 of us, and so we had a lot of the team parties at our house. And one of the team parties we hosted. Our captain at the time too was Billy Guerin.
Mm-hmm.
So Billy G and a few other guys set up a cop from Long Island to come to our house and arrest one of the players. And the easiest guy at the time was kind of he was an easy target was Chris Campoli. Mm-hmm. And so I remember we were at the house, and everybody kind of has an idea what's going on, a few of us, and the cop shows up, and Billy's, trying to, calm the guy down, calm the cop, and the cop tells him, just can we cuss on here or what?
Yeah, whatever you want. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So the cop's like looks at Billy and says, "Shut the fuck up," like to him like that. And it was pretty funny because Billy just kind of like, "Oh, okay," and like backs off, right?
Which is not his style at all.
No, not his style at all. But it was so hilarious the way this cop just like talked down to him like right away and like made it look good. And so they grabbed Campy and cuffed him in the house in front of everybody. I'm not sure if to this day I'm not sure if he still believes like. He was telling us after that he knew, but I don't know. But they took him and they put him in the cop car. I think they drove him around the neighborhood a little bit or something, and then brought him.
No way.
Oh yeah. And this was right in the middle of a team party. I think maybe it was a Halloween one, so he was dressed up maybe silly or something like that, sitting in the back of a cop car, and yeah, that was it. So I mean that was a pretty good time, and the cops came back, brought him to the front door, but it was just I just remember vividly like Billy G freaking out, and this cop just like talking down to him, like put him in his place, and Billy being like, okay. So that's one of the Islander stories I have.
That's unreal. And Doug Waite was on that team too, right? Like that was
Wade. Yeah. We had some Richard Park, Brendan Witt. We had a lot of old school vets on our team. We weren't very
No.
Johnny had a run in with Billy Guerin and Chris Kelleher this summer at the draft, and we were leaving the restaurant, and we stopped to chat. I actually didn't know Chris Kelleher at the time. I know his brother. He's in charge of USA Hockey, Pat, and I know Billy Guerin a little bit. Frank knows Bill Guerin, and Chris Kelleher, the assistant general manager in Minnesota, looks at Johnny, and Johnny, you can tell the story because I don't remember it exactly, but basically looks at Johnny and he's like, I got a problem with you, or I got a bone to pick with you. And Johnny's face went, and this is in the middle of summer, so he had a nice tan going, and literally he went ghostly white. What could I have done to the assistant GM of the Minnesota Wild? And then he got into Johnny. Johnny, you can tell the story better.
So I just introduced myself, said, hey, Johnny Lazarus, nice to meet you. He goes, I've heard your name before. And I was like, no, I thought it was cool at first. I was like, oh my God, this is sick, because I'm still getting used to people knowing who I am.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I think you did a Minnesota Wild radio show and you called us Minnesota, Minnesota. And I was like, yep, I did do that. and he was like, honestly, I kind of respect, I respect you for doing it, but F off.
Kindly,
Johnny had to go to the room and change his shorts after that.
Yeah. But we actually, you know what? We ended up hanging out at the bar that whole night. And it's funny, actually, 3 nights ago, he friend requested me on Facebook, and I texted him. I was like, dude, you're still using Facebook? Come on. So I thought it was
You're
really
still
funny.
using Facebook?
Well, I get the notifications. I only look at it for birthdays. I miss a lot of birthdays. I'm not good with birthdays.
Smart.
So I checked that in the morning, and my dad's probably laughing next to me right now. He's sitting in the living room because my dad writes on people's Facebook walls still at 5 a.m. Happy birthday, have the best day. But Nate, there's one more thing I got to ask you before we let you go, and I know you know this is coming. Pat Maroon joins our show once a week, every week, and you guys spent, I think, 2 or 3 seasons together in Anaheim.
Yep.
The conference final year, maybe the one you were talking about before.
Yep.
Do you have a Pat Maroon story for us from when you guys were teammates in Anaheim?
Patty Maroon, the big rig. I mean, I don't know if I have any specific stories. It was just Patty is just one of those guys when he comes in the room, he's larger than life and he's loud and he's hilarious, and you just love having around. I mean, and even in practice, I always have the visual and remembering Patty coming down a 1-on-1 or 3-on-2 or whatever it is in practice, and you're doing a certain drill, and he's doing backhand toe drags on the defense. But Patty's got sick hands. For a big guy, he's got really good hands. But I just remember him he'd come down and do a backhand toe drag, and all you hear is "oh baby," coming around right, trying to get his big body going, doing a backhand toe drag. I mean, he's just a great teammate, great guy. I'm still friends with him, still talk to him to this day. So I'm glad you guys get to have the big rig on once a week. He's a gem.
Yeah, it's the roller hockey where he gets the backhand toe drag.
Oh man, I remember first started playing with him. I'm like, who is this guy? He's so big, but man, this guy's hands are pretty sick.
Who was your coach at the time? Was it Carlisle in Anaheim?
I had Bruce 2 years, and then Carlisle my last year.
I can't imagine the backhand toe drag from the rig would have gone over well with Carlisle. That doesn't seem like it would be.
No. I mean, sometimes the coaches just shake their head at Patty Maroon, but Patty at the same time though, he was a big player for us. I mean, he was playing with Getzlaf and Perry a lot, and those 3 were if they got the puck below the top of the circles in the offensive zone, the other team wasn't getting the puck.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was great. I love Patty.
Bruce Boudreau's been in our show a couple of times too. He must have been a hilarious guy to play for. What was it him that I remember as a kid, obviously watching 24/7? Was he the one that called the non-PP guys the shit bums? Was that him?
I don't know, something like that. But funny story about Bruce too is I got this nickname in Anaheim because of him, because we were doing video one day or something like that, and he's sometimes he was talking and it wasn't coming out right, and he just called me Ned. Ned here, and the whole locker room started dying laughing. And this was the first year I was with Anaheim too. So from then on, I was Ned. guys were calling me Ned. Even the coaches were eventually calling me Ned, and that was my nickname in Anaheim because Bruce Boudreau called me Ned in a video session one time.
It is always funny when a coach does like butchers a guy's name, and then that just, I was like, okay, it makes no sense, but perfect, you know?
Yeah, like I remember I saw Getzlaff, I don't know how long ago it was, and the first thing he said, "Hey, Ned," you know, right away. You know, I haven't heard that nickname in forever. So thanks, Bruce.
That's hilarious.
Well, look, hopefully you're going to continue doing the golf tournaments. I saw all the fanfare around that, and you know, we'll see who reigns supreme as far as the athletes go on the golf tournaments. That was a pretty cool event. I saw, obviously you were the driving force behind that. I saw the Empty Netters guys were doing the media, all that stuff behind that. You seem like you're involved. You seem like you're involved in a lot of things, which is cool. And then you have a 20-month-old daughter, and as I was telling the audience, our daughters are born the same day, just a couple hours apart. So we're always going back and forth. I always say it, Nate's father of the year. There's not even a comparison because I hand off to my wife, and there's no handoff for you. You're all in. So that's why I say dad of the year.
I'm trying. I don't know about dad of the year, but I'm doing my best. I mean, that's all we can do, right? Just do our best. But I do know one thing. Like we talked about this, both our daughters being born on the same day. They're nuts. They're nuts. Like, she's crazy. I can hear her right now. She's just like buffalo running through the house right now. But yeah, I think that's because they were both born on the same day, probably.
We call Sloan Tropical Storm Sloan, but it'll only be a couple of years before we've got them at Lincoln Financial and their Kelly Green in their Kelly Greens, and they'll be yelling with all the drunk fans of on Broad Street. So
fly.
So Nate, look, we'll catch up with you again. I know this was early for you. I mean, we know you're up early, but you're a busy guy. But yeah, good luck with the TV stuff. We'll keep an eye out for you on the Empty Netters. You're welcome back on our show anytime. Anytime something big happens in LA, now you're going to be our go-to for that. And have a great Thanksgiving, man. And again, it's good to see your face, not in the flesh, but somewhat in the flesh. So that's always a good day.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. And if you guys ever want me to come on and chop it up, I'll be more than happy to. So thanks for having me on. And your Rangers are going to be okay, Johnny.
Thanks, Nate. Also, answer me first next time so Colby doesn't get credit for the guests.
No, Nate knows better. Come on, Nate knows better. Nate knows better. Come on.
Happy Thanksgiving, Nate.
Happy Thanksgiving, boys.
All right, Nate, have a good one.
I just want to apologize also to John Chan. He just wrote in our chat, asked Nate if he has any good Winnipeg Jet stories during his time there. We can ask him that next. We'll get Nate back on. He'll come back.
He talked from Winnipeg. He did talk a little Winnipeg.
Yeah,
look, I think we've done a lot more Winnipeg Jets this year than we did last year.
Well, they deserve it. I mean,
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. But I'm just saying we do try. Like, look, we do keep an eye on the teams that people are always hitting us in the chat about. You know, and
besides
again,
St. Louis, fuck it, J-Rock.
Sorry, J-Rock. St. Louis just doesn't. You know, they just don't. Don't worry, J-Rock. When the Frozen Four happens, you're gonna come out drinking with Butchie and I one night. We'll make it up to you. But
I will say though, Colby, to that, Vic said before we started our show today, he thinks the Blues will catch Calgary and make the playoffs. He did say that. So shout out to Vic.
Vic also couldn't get the video to work.
Vic's
he had the wrong thing on the standings. He just was away for like a month. Okay. So and he's going away for like 3 months sometime in the next couple of weeks. So I
know he's cracking up behind the scenes.
Honestly, I don't even think I can look at him right now for being honest about things. But my point being is that we do see the teams that you guys are interested in the chat, and that does inform where we try to take the show. Like when we're in a pre-show meeting, we make sure we're like, okay, we know certain people are going to be here and want to hear about the show. So the thing that we would tell you is if you are a listener of our show and you come into YouTube or wherever you take it in, you know, make sure you're hitting in the chat, right? Like throw your opinions in the chat, talk about the teams you want to hear about in the chat, because we will definitely do our best to steer our show in the direction of the things that you guys want to hear. So, you know, don't be silent. If you're a longtime dedicated listener and watcher of our show, don't be too quiet, because, you know, we may be missing things you want to hear and you want to talk about because we don't know, right? I mean, I know Daily Faceoff ran that survey, and they wanted to hear from you guys, but also comment on Jeremiah, comment on X, comment on this, hit us on the comment section, send Jonny a bunch of DMs on social media. There's a million ways you guys can tell us who you like and who you want to hear. And we'll go there. So make sure you guys are I'm laughing at Jay Miller's comment. As J-Rock comes in, we were just ripping on you, J-Rock. Sorry, man, you're too late. But look, I want to remind everybody as it is our last show of the week. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Make sure you subscribe to the Daily Face-Off YouTube page. Make sure you're giving our episodes a like. Frank Saravalli and his show, that'll be up at noon today. And then they'll be back, I believe, on Friday. I'll be subbing in on that show next week, Monday and Tuesday. And Jeff Merrick's show starts December 2nd, 3 p.m. That'll be live Monday through Fridays, The Sheet. That'll be interesting. He's going to get great guests. He's well plugged in. A lot of people are dying to get him back on the air live and get to hear his voice. So, make sure you're dialed, right? You're dialed. Yeah. And I see a comment in the chat from New York Marine. It says, I want your opinion about the New York beat war. Larry Brooks said Trouba hinted at non-reporting, and Vince. I can't say his. I can't even pronounce normal last names, let alone that. He believes Trouba when he says he didn't. I've seen a little bit of the discourse about this whole Jacob Trouba situation. I disagree with a lot of things Larry Brooks does. I think that go ahead, Jonny. This is your sweet spot. So go ahead.
I want to lead us into this because I have a hard off in 10 minutes, and our OutWest Worst Team of the Week is, in fact, the New York Rangers. And I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, OutWest, as we always love to give love to. The holiday shopping season is in full swing. And if you're on the hunt for the perfect gift, give the gift of OutWest. Right now, we're running our early bird Black Friday sale with 25% off site-wide. Polos, hoodies, hats, women's styles, it's all there. So trade the dreaded department store lines for the convenience of OutWestGolf.com. We'll ship it all right to you so you can knock out your holiday shopping list from the couch this season. Give the people what they want. Give OutWest. Our code is Cuppa, CUPPA, in all caps. And Colby, continue. I just wanted to make it clear that our OutWest Worst Team of the Week is, in fact, the New York Rangers. Continue. Sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah, I see a lot of the things from Larry Brooks these days that I don't really agree with. And I'm not following the situation super closely, New York Marine. But here's what I'll say about Jacob Trouba. When you have no trade protection, you are very well within your rights to exercise it. And if I was Jacob Trouba, if you're trying to trade me to a team that is on my no trade list, there's a 0% chance that I'm going. 0%. To think that he just wouldn't report if he got traded to a team not on his no trade list, that I do not see happening. I don't see him just saying, I'm not going, my hockey career's over. So I don't generally believe 99% of what writers say. I would say, unless it's a hard quote and it's the full quote and it's not the quote that's chopped up, chances are they're putting their own spin on it. They're putting their own tone to it. I wouldn't believe it. And J-Rock, FYI, I would go play for the Blues if I was still a hockey player because I love Jim Montgomery. And I played actually some preseason games in St. Louis, and the building was rocking. My best friend was a St. Louis Blue for the first portion of his career, used to just tell me how incredible of a place it was to live, obviously not in the city, but in the suburbs, and then how incredible the fan base and the atmosphere was. So in a heartbeat would play in that market with how passionate those fans are, just to answer that. But I just don't put a lot of stock into Larry Brooks. I just don't.
Well, I think Larry gets his information from, higher ups for sure. I wouldn't say it's false information. But this whole Trouba thing has definitely been a little bit out of hand. He is the captain of the team. And for a guy to take this much heat for this long, it's tough. And listen, it's a winning hockey team. I think that's the hardest part of all this. And Colby, I know you said to me, and Vic said it as well. And I think Nate and Frank even touched on it. Like when you look at the Rangers record, there's no reason for all these things, but the fans here have seen this for a long time and just know better and want better. But again, I don't agree with the treatment that Jacob Trouba has gotten over the past, let's say, 2 years. More so as a human being than as a hockey player and captain, because I think his personal life has gotten involved and a lot of information has been given out, and people like attack his wife and stuff, and it's just unnecessary. But listen, I do think there is. Listen, I know just as much as the next guy. I do think there is obviously some truth behind these reports, and as a media member, you have to ask the questions sometimes. You have to, or else you're not doing your job. That's
always ask the question. Yeah. Always.
But you can't, people get like mad at me and DM me to like go at Laviolette and challenge him with the numbers of Lindgren and Trouba's D pair and ask him why. I'm like, it's not my job to tell him what's working and what's not. I ask him the questions and then he gives me an answer and I tell everyone what the answer is. But it's not like I'm supposed to stand up in the media room and say, well, this isn't working, so you should change it. Like, that's not my job. I would love to do that, but that's not my job.
If you were paid to be the coach of the New York Rangers, you could do that. That's how you lose your
credential in a snap.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't think you'd lose your credential, but I do think you have a different level of respect for what these people do because you've been in the game. And I think a lot of people that have never actually been this close to it, played it, worked at the highest levels, whatever, like they don't necessarily have that same level of respect for the ecosystem of how it works. Listen, I'm not saying don't ask tough questions. I'm not saying don't hold a coach's feet to the fire. But when you have media members that think that they know better about what structure the team should be or what lines they should go together, how many hours of film are you watching? How many games are you sitting there when a game ends at 10 p.m., the coaches go
Coaches
home.
Don't leave till 12:30.
Or they go home and they sit on their computer until 4 o'clock in the morning and they watch and they hit spacebar, stop, pause, stop, go, pause, play. Like you literally sit there and do that for 4 hours. So until you do that, you don't know better. Your job doesn't depend on these situations. You might have a loud opinion, but your livelihood and your job don't depend on it. And look, I see your comment. You think he likely weaseled his way out of a trade this summer to a trade on his trade list. Listen, if they're on his list of places he won't go, then that's just reality. That is just purely reality. So look, we'll see what happens. And players, be angry at a GM for giving a player either a no move clause or a protection list. Don't be mad at a player for exercising his right. Otherwise, it's useless to even have it in your contract. Okay. And yes, Dealey, spacebar on almost every video software I've ever used, because there's a bunch of different ones in hockey that I have. Yeah. Play and stop is always spacebar
on YouTube, on everything.
Okay, it's on YouTube too. Okay, he might just be giving
common knowledge.
He might just be giving me shit. By the way, he might just be giving me shit. So but J-Rock said it. Don't give someone a limited no trade list if you're going to get mad if they use it. It's just like saying a player's greedy. No owners are greedy for having a salary cap. Why do we only look at it from the player's perspective every time? Right? I mean, come on. It's and New York Marine says, no, Colby, I have no issue with him saying no to teams that are on his no trade list. I think he stopped a trade to a team that was not on his no trade list. I don't know how he could have done that.
Yeah, that's gotta be a false report.
Like to me, you're guessing. Unless you could tell me that you have hard evidence of that, and he told you, or someone in his family or his agent told you that, to me, that's just hearsay. That's just pure speculation, and that's just hearsay. And I'm not making my opinions based on speculation and hearsay, okay? And that's just my opinion on it. But I just don't. I'm not going there, Johnny. So
yeah, no, I agree.
We'll see what happens, though. We know you're going to keep us updated on the New York Rangers. So let's get to our Betway bet of the night, so you can get going. I know you've got things you got to do today, Johnny. So let's get to Betway.
Yeah, I'm actually hopping on Sirius XM radio in like 5 minutes to talk more about the Rangers with Gord Stellick and Mike Rupp. So if you want to listen to that, tune in. I'll be talking Rangers 5 minutes from now. But our bet 365 bet of the night, and while we're talking about the New York Rangers, we're going to bet against them. And we're going Carolina on the puck line -1.5 at +160. Carolina generates the most shots and are up top for the most scoring chances in the NHL. The Rangers have given up 40+ shots over their last 3 games. Signs all point to the direction that the Rangers are probably going to get outshot 50-20 tonight. And you have to think that Carolina will be able to break through while the Rangers are going to struggle to create offense. It's been their story the entire season. They struggle to get out of their own zone. And Carolina, the way they forecheck, the aggressiveness they play with, are going to bring it to the Rangers the entire night. I have no doubt about it. So it hurts me to say, but we're going with Carolina -1.5 for pretty good value at +160. And I see you kind of smirking over there. What do you got?
I almost think you want. I think you like when the Rangers suffer.
I'm starting. I'm not saying I'm enjoying it, but right now, like I'm seeing I know what I'm seeing, and I know what this team is right now. And I think the worse it gets, the more improvements will be made. So I'm not going to sit here and say like, I'm hoping they just squeak by another win and nothing changes. Like that's just how I feel personally.
I'm just responding to New York Marine in the chat as we're wishing everyone. So we want to wish everybody a happy and healthy and safe Thanksgiving. Be safe out there tonight. You know, so it's a big party night. I'm sure Jonny will be out at the bars.
I'm just doing a big Italian dinner with some high school friends. Going to get a little wine drunk and hit on some bartenders. How about you?
Okay, and you'll probably come home alone and strike out as you usually do.
Yeah.
Karen will be picking you up from your friend's house at some point this evening. We know she'll be there to back you up. But we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We appreciate you guys rolling with us. We're sorry about the short week this week. We'll be back with everybody at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll keep this thing going here, Jonny. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the show. We're not there, but we are coming up on it. So we are going to have to start planning something big for the 1-year anniversary show in, I believe, January 2nd. So we still have December to figure out how we want that to look. But you're not doing any college games this weekend, are you?
I am. Friday night, UMass and Army at the Mullen Center.
Okay. All right, good. All right. We got a couple guys on the Titans that are committed to West Point. So I'm excited about that team. One of my former teammates from the American League is going to be head coach there next year. So Jonny, you look like you're bringing in your parents to say hello.
No, just to say congrats, Colby. All the best.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Enjoy.
And my daughter loves coming on in the pre-show meeting and saying hi to Jonny in the morning. It's like one of her favorite things. So she loves Jonny.
You got to start telling her stay away from guys like Jack.
Don't worry. We'll have a picture of Jonny in our house, and we'll say, you see a guy like this, go the other way. No hockey players for my daughter. That's a no doubt. So
don't say that. A hockey player, just not Jonny.
Yeah, no, trust me. Jonny's probably one of the good ones.
Get out of here.
Anyways, all right, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great weekend, and we'll see everybody back here 9 a.m. morning.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.